Hello and welcome back to Keeping It Real. I'm your host, Aaron Lima, and if you want more content on the latest movies coming out, please follow my channel. I love reviewing movies, and if that's what you love too, then please consider um, liking and subscribing and following me on my movie reviews. For this movie review, we are going to be talking about Wicked for Good. As you could tell from the title, I was very displeased walking out of the theater for Wicked for Good. And before I see people going, "Oh, Wicked's my favorite movie. I'm gonna write this hate comment." Wicked for Good was disappointing for one reason, and let me paint a picture. So, Wicked One comes out, and I go to the theater with my buddy, and I watch it, and maybe an hour and 45 minutes or 30 minutes, I leave the theater, and I don't usually leave the theater, but for Wicked, I left the theater just because I wasn't really enjoying the movie. I thought it was very cliche, a little cheesy, and I just thought it wasn't for me. But Oscar season comes around, and Wicked gets nominated for a handful of Oscars, so I decided to give it another shot. When I watched the full movie all the way through, I decided that I really, really enjoyed the movie. I thought that the ending set up a lot for the sequel, Wicked for Good, and I was encouraged to see this movie. When I saw the trailer, it looked promising. So when I went to go see this movie, I saw it 2 nights ago. I was very, very disappointed walking out of that theater. And the main reason why I was disappointed is because Wicked, number one, had its own original story and it didn't really have to tie into anything. But Wicked 2 had to wrap it up. And for me, I just wasn't really enjoyable. And I'll go into my reasons. But Wicked 2, I think I was so disappointed with it that it made me like Wicked 1 a little bit more. So for this review, my critiques mainly have to do with the characters and the themes. So as I critique this movie, it's not really about the movie itself in terms of filming and acting wise. I'm really critiquing the plot of Wicked. I think it gets a little bit messy, and yeah, let's jump into it.
Trust me, it's fun.
So starting off with the characters, if you don't know, Wicked has to do with the original 1939 movie Wizard of Oz, and Wizard of Oz is a very very fun film that I watched when I was very young. But Wicked is essentially like a backstory to that. If you don't know too much about Wicked, and essentially there's these two main characters, one named Elphaba, who's the Wicked Witch, and one named Glinda, and she is the witch, or not the witch, she's the Glinda the Good. That's what they call her. And basically, Wicked is the backstory of how they came to be, and kind of how the Wizard of Oz isn't what we perceived it to be. We thought Dorothy was this hero figure that traveled the yellow brick road to get back to her home, and Wicked kind of does a whole twist on that story, and essentially it ties up why the Wicked Witch isn't really so wicked. And I think that was the main problem with Wicked 2, is that Wicked 2 now had to become the Wizard of Oz. And I think that this led the movie to be a little unoriginal, and it led characters to make these rapid shifts in order to fit the character that they are in the Wizard of Oz. The two examples that I have of this is there's a character named Bach, and Bach in the first movie he's in the friend group with Galinda and Elphaba, the two main characters, and he's this very very happy guy, and he's in love with Galinda, and he's just a very very optimistic character. When it comes to Wicked 2, he now needs to become the Tin Man. That's like the fate of his story. And in Wicked 2, essentially what happens is that Elphaba makes her sister makes a mistake and accidentally casts a spell that would kill Bach and basically take out his heart. So Elphaba had to think on her feet, and she casted a spell where he could have a body that wouldn't need a heart. So he turns into the Tin Man. What was disappointing about this for me is that Bach, as the Tin Man, does a complete 180. He was this very happy character. If you've seen Wicked 1, he is always smiling, doing his little dances. But in Wicked 2, after he turns into the Tin Man, all he cared about was killing the Wicked Witch, which to me was interesting because he actually knows who the character of the Wicked Witch is. He knows that she is a good character, and he knows that she is fighting for something good. Yet he decides, once he becomes the Tin Man and loses his physical, like human appearance, he decides to go on a mission to kill her. Um, and I think that this all the character development and the original character that Bach was completely out of the window just to fit the character of the Tin Man. Another thing that I found was Fierro, who is the prince and, yeah, the very popular guy in the school. He's also part of the friend group. And basically, in Wicked 2, he is now a high ranking soldier and he lives the high life. But he leaves this life to because he's in love with the Wicked Witch. And Fierro is fated to become the Scarecrow. Um, and essentially, what happens is that Fierro he leaves Galinda for Elphaba, the Wicked Witch, and they fall in love. And basically, there's this moment where Elphaba gets captured. So what Fierro does is he gathers an army of flying monkeys, and he goes to go save her. And when he goes to save her, he has an army of flying monkeys. He frees Elphaba from getting captured, and he pulls one of these. He goes, "Go, get out of here before they capture you." He has an army of flying monkeys, and there's maybe 10 guards in front of him. He could easily just leave with her, but he says, "Go, leave." And he does this self sacrificing moment that was not needed at all. And basically, he ends up getting captured and having to be executed. So, what Elphaba does is she goes to her castle and she casts a spell where he becomes the Scarecrow in order for him to not die. And what confuses me is that he is in love with the Wicked Witch, yet he joins Dorothy on the quest to kill the Wicked Witch. So if he already knows who the Wicked Witch is, and he knows that Dorothy wants to go kill the Wicked Witch, why is like what like I don't like they don't really explain his intentions. It's kind of just left open in the air. Um, and they do this with a bunch of characters. They do this with the Cowardly Lion. If you watch the movie, they even do this with Galinda in some ways, where they just have these dramatic character shifts just to fit the movie. And for me, it was very disappointing that this is their explanation for how they become these characters. Honestly, it was one of the most exciting things about the movie is I was ready to see these characters become what I saw as a kid, like the Cowardly Lion, the Scarecrow, the Tin Man. But the way that they did it to ruin who the characters actually were, to me, I found it very disappointing. Another critique that I found in the film is towards the end. This is all spoiler territory, so be warned. Towards the end, the Great Wizard, the one who has been orchestrating all this, changing history, so he could, be this big figurehead. He, at the very end, realizes that the Wicked Witch is his daughter, and then decides he's convinced to leave. So he's like some kind of alcoholic, and he sees this flask, and he was like, "Oh, the Wicked Witch had this flask. I must be her father." And then he just leaves, and like that was to tie into the wizard leaving in the Wizard of Oz. And I thought it was a very lame portrayal. And just things like this where characters and the plot of the movie just had to change really really fast so that they could just tie up those loose ends. It was very disappointing. um but another thing that I thought was kind of lacking was the themes, and that's what I'm going to go into next.
Wonderful, wonderful.
So when we look at the themes of Wicked, it portrays a actually really interesting theme of like dictatorship, changing history, um, and suppressing the voice of a minority. And in this film, it does that through the Wizard of Oz, who is the dictator figure, and it shows animals who are losing their voice as like this minority that's being suppressed by the Great Wizard. And it does a really good job at showing a lot of that. In the film, the animals are kind of like the keepers of history. So the Great Wizard wants to kind of silence them so that they can't. He wants to be posed as this figure that has basically built Oz from the bottom to the top, and the animals are like, "Nah, you didn't do that." And he's like, but I want the people to know that I did that. So he changes history and then silences the animals. And it's actually they did a really good job at portraying that. However, in the movie, I was a little disappointed because they don't just show you, they need to tell you. So, for example, they'll lock up animals, or animals won't be able to speak, and they'll say, "Oh my gosh, you can't speak because the great wizard is doing this to you." Like we could already see it, but now they need to explain it. And I think that this is a very poor way of storytelling. I think if we just see a visual representation of animals being caged up and animals not being able to talk anymore, they do that in the film, but they also need to talk about it. And for me, I just found it a little cheesy. Like it's like they think their viewership is a little dumb, or it's going to go over their head, because they just did it way too many times where they need to show more than they tell. And speaking of the animals being a theme of a minority, the animals sometimes would be forgotten as a plot point. It would focus so much on Elphaba and Galinda that they would completely disregard that the animals were a focal point of why the Wicked Witch is doing this in the first place. In Wicked Part 2, there was three scenes where the animals were shown. The first scene was seeing all the animals started running away from Oz. The second scene was seeing all the animals caged up, and then the third scene was seeing all the animals come back. So there was only three scenes, and these scenes are less than 5 minutes, and it's a 2-hour movie, and that's all we get to see of the animals. And for me, I was very disappointed, because if this is the main reason why the Wicked Witch is doing all this, and you're only having three scenes about it, I think that you're lacking in your storytelling and in what you show. And you forget that it's a focal point of the theme, because they're just singing about friendship and stuff for so long that you're forgetting the underlying themes. One thing that I found very fascinating, a little movie Easter egg, is that during the song "Wonderful," in which Jeff Goldblum, the Wizard of Oz, starts singing about him being this like kind of dictator, um, and how he's like changing history so that people trust in him. He grabs this world map, and he starts like floating it up in the air, and that's actually a reference to The Great Dictator, a Charlie Chaplin film in which he portrays Hitler, and he does something very similar. And I thought that was a very fun movie Easter egg. Speaking about the songs, that song "Wonderful" was probably my favorite song of the bunch. I think that the songs in this film were very weak. I think they could have been a lot better. I mean, Wicked One had, I mean, hits like "Loathing" and "The Wizard and I," and "Popular," songs that everybody knows. And then in Wicked Part 2, they really only had two songs that I enjoyed, and it was "For Good" and "Wonderful." And then the rest of the songs just felt like repeats of previous songs. I think that this is my only critique of the movie. I think that the songs, the back music of the songs, like the guitar or the piano, they sounded very, very, very basic. There wasn't really anything emotionally grabbing when any of the characters were singing. It's like they just wanted you to hear their voice more than it wanted to be like a musical production. And I thought this was a little disappointing, because I think it could have just been a lot more. I think that the first movie did a really good job at having the background music, but in this film they completely disregarded it. Um, I mean, if you're a little bit of a film nerd, I don't know if anyone else is gonna have this critique, but the color grading in the film was very bland. It felt like, for a multi-million dollar production, it felt like um, they sometimes forgot about it, and it honestly made the movie not look horrible. It didn't look horrible in any way, but it just looked like it could, like, you're portraying the Wizard of Oz, which is, the movie that started, Technicolor, and for your movie to look that bland, I just think is just a small critique that I had in my mind. Aside from that, my conclusion for this film is it was honestly not worth it for me to see. If you've seen Wicked Part 1, then I think, yeah, go watch this movie, just see how it wraps up. But I was very disappointed with this movie. I'll be very honest. I gave this movie a 2.5 on Letterbox. If you don't follow me on Letterbox, here is my Letterbox handle. But I was very disappointed with how this movie turned out. I think it could have been a lot better. If there was something I missed or and something in my critique that I, that just completely went over my head, please, tell me in the comments or anything, because I think the critiques that I had of this movie, I feel like I might be a minority in my views and my perspectives. I might something could have completely uh, went past me, but I was disappointed walking out of that theater. I was disappointed with the music. I don't think it's a horrible film in any way. I mean, a 2.5 is a 5 out of 10, but again, that is my enjoyability. I think that diehard Wicked fans might love this. I've heard that people who have seen the musical are going to enjoy this a lot more than someone who's just watching the movies. So I think there's so many factors that go into it. I feel like if I watched the musical, the Broadway musical, I feel like I would enjoy the storyline of Wicked a lot more. But yeah, that's my full review. I think again they could have done a lot better, but let me know what you guys think. Yeah, anyway, keep it real.